Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kingdom Life Unfiltered podcast. I am your host, Janine Marino, and I'm excited to share my beautiful friend Kelly with you today. We are going to talk about some things that is just really pivotal for homeschooling moms and entrepreneurs. Kelly is also a homeschooling mom of five. She's an author, an Amazon influencer, and founder of Wholemom Revolution, a movement that helps purpose driven moms renew their mindset, rebuild their confidence, and rise into the life that God's calling them to live. And this is like so my heart. So I'm so excited. So through her Whole Mom Revolution podcast and community on school, Kelly empowers moms to break free from fear, self-doubt, and survival mode so that they can really thrive in faith, family, and purpose. And after building multiple streams of income from home, including over 865,000 in shipped revenue through the Amazon influencer program, she now teaches other moms how to create income without sacrificing what matters most. So, Kelly, I love this topic. I love that you are a multi-passionate entrepreneur as well, and just like have that heart to help other moms in this space. So take us back to, what was the moment or season that sparked the whole mom revolution? And like, how did you get started in this space? Like, where were you before?
Yeah. So first, I want to thank you for having me on this wonderful podcast. I wish I had known about it sooner. I was just like going through all your stuff really quick, and I was like, I got to binge this. So thank you for having me here. And so it's been a long journey. My second child, she just turned 13 this summer, and when I was pregnant with her, I had every intention of just going back and being a waitress after I had her. And like the moment she was born, I just like looked at her and I was like, I can't leave this child. I cannot leave this baby. Like I don't know how. With my first, I was 17 when I had him, and that was tough in its own regard and gave me the heart for the pro-life ministry and all that is on my heart, long-term goals. But with her, it was just like I wanted to be home with my baby, right? So I told my husband, I had every intention on going back, and he's like, no, he's like, we'll figure out a way, we'll make it work. And so I clipped coupons and I went to thrift stores and yard sales and sold stuff on eBay in my free time, and, I actually tried being an influencer back then too before it was a thing, and I actually, like, requested some coffee pods and a company sent them to me, and I made a YouTube video, and it was so funny because I didn't tag anything. I don't know how I thought I was gonna, like, get paid. It was the craziest thing. I look back on it and I'm, like, cracking up. But I tried so many, like, little things and nothing really worked, and I didn't believe in myself, and I was like, "This sucks." And a couple years later, my husband's like, "Alright, we had another kid now." So we were at 3, and he's like, "You might have to go back to work." And, it was really hard for me because I had been a stay-at-home mom for, like, 6 years now, 5, 6 years, and, going back out into the workforce and, like, leaving my babies was really hard for me. It actually, like I don't know how to describe it, but it made me feel like I lost who I was, and I didn't know who I was anymore, and I was going, like, anywhere from 6 to, like, 12 hours without my little ones, my 2.5 and 5-year-old at the time and my older son, of course. And it was really rough. And it was like about almost a year of that. We actually almost lost our marriage over it. It was tough. I backslid, and the Lord is gracious though. He brought me back home, and I just knew that that wasn't for me. I knew that that kind of life wasn't for me. Like that, I didn't want to be out there away from my babies. And over the years, like I said, God is so good. He has like brought us back together. He's given us more babies. Now we have 5 total. But He's just given me this heart this whole time. He's like, this is where you need to be. You need to be home. You need to be a keeper of the home, and I've done various things to try and make that work, but it kind of all came together when I realized like there are so many other moms who are in the exact same boat. Either they have to go back to work, they don't want to, or maybe they do want to, but they really don't know why, and they think that that's the only option is, what I call working for the man. Whatever the thing is. And I see this so much happening. And I believe that God wants moms to be home raising their babies, especially when they're little. But I mean, even when they're older, they need us. And so I think one of the biggest struggles moms face is mindset, like believing that they can actually make that work, and more so believing that like they can do something meaningful and purposeful. Because a lot of times it's like, oh, I just want to get a job and get paid, right? But it's like you can create value and actually get paid. And I think that's what God's intention was. And not that every 100% of everyone can do that, but I think if we align ourselves with like what God says and what his plan for our life is, and we truly have the heart to be home with our babies and also to help others in whatever field God has placed us in, that we can make that a reality. So that has been like my core driver ever since God kind of revealed that to me in like bits and pieces.
Gosh, I love that so much because first off, I relate so much to your story because I remember we have 5 boys, and we not only have I was a stay-at-home mom to begin with, and then I was a single mom, so then I was a working mom, and that was really, really hard, and then I remember when I came home and I was a stay-at-home mom again for a while, but then at one point in time too, like, I think sometimes, especially as homeschool moms, I feel like you kinda, like, get lost a little bit in motherhood, and there's seasons for everything, but I remember hitting a point where I was like, okay, like, first off, we needed another income. At that point, I couldn't just go get a job because I would have had to put my kids back in school and put kids in daycare, and it just wasn't going to make sense. And I remember feeling just so stressed about the whole situation and also realizing how many moms feel that way. And so
Mm.
I think that it is so important that we start to normalize that and normalize the fact that you can make an income from home. You can, and then there's so many different ways. And also, coming from someone that I don't know how you felt when you first started, but I know when I first started, I did not feel qualified. I was like, I'm too
Mm.
shy. I don't know how to do this. I can't show up online. I never would have shown up on video. I didn't know if I could do it. I really didn't. And it comes down to like being willing to learn the skills. And I think that's something that so many people are like, that's great that you can do that, but I couldn't do that because it's just not my personality. Let me tell you, it was not my personality either. Like I would have 100% said, there's no way I could do that. And then being able to step in and then obviously, especially as believers, stepping in with God is huge. I mean, if God is with you, he's going to equip you. You're going to learn the things. He's going to show up. So how was that for you? Because I know that nobody comes into this and is like, "Yep, I figured it out. I got this." So tell me a little bit about the journey. What was it like when you first got started?
Well, there was a lot of doubt both for me and, like, those around me. Like, my husband, he still works, obviously, he works, like, for a person, he works for a company, and he's still kind of, like, of the belief that you kinda need to work for someone, like, the rare few get lucky enough to be able to be an entrepreneur and to work for themselves and all that. So, it was hard because I had, like, a lot of voices really close to me around me, like, loving and well-intentioned, but they're like, "Well, that's a cute dream, but, you might have to wake up to reality." And so I think that was the hardest part for me was because, like, it's so ingrained in us, like, from school when we're little, it's like, "Go to school, study hard, pass the test, go to college, like, get a good job," and that was the American dream for, like, forever, right? Like, even back in our parents' day. And now that the world is so different, it's changing so rapidly, it's become more accepted now, and I almost feel like if I had waited a couple years, maybe it would have been easier in a
Well,
way. But, like, I think God kind of, like, along the path, like, gave me these little nuggets of, like, letting me struggle and, like, still struggle because that's kind of where I'm helping moms at is in the struggle that I went through and am still going through. Because as I learn, I can kind of be like, "Hey, I'm not, like, super far ahead of you," because that's unrelatable, right? Like, if you go, like, hey, and I love, like, listening to Tony Robbins, most of his stuff is pretty good, and all these big, like, people, the coaches that are telling you, like, this is, how to do. But for a lot of people, especially those first starting out, they're unrelatable, they're untouchable because 'cause they're so far out there. They're, like, making, 8, 9, 10 figure whatever, and they just have, like, all this advice that someone that's already making it would say, and so I think, like, having someone that's just starting to, like, make ground is kind of helpful. But, yeah, it hasn't been easy, and I don't think it ever will be because, that's how God is refining us is through the struggles. So I think we have to kinda just look at it not as like, "Oh, I'm failing," or "I'm struggling," as to what is God trying to teach me in this very season or this very moment, and what am I going to teach others through it? Because, like, how the Bible says, like, the comfort that God has given us, we also are able to comfort others. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you know what I mean? Like, that's part of the journey, and that's part of the beauty in it, and if we can't see that, then, we miss one of the main points, I think.
yeah, 100%. And I think too that, everyone goes through those times. Everyone. Like no one comes in and just has it figured out and just skyrockets. I mean, if they did, they had a lot of training in something else beforehand. And so
Mhm.
it's not something that they just came in and rocked it out. And so I think the other thing too that is really released me, I think, from feeling like I don't know, I guess from feeling comparing myself a little bit and just thinking like, well, I could never be like them, because I feel like you look up to these certain people that are making it and you're like, I just couldn't be like that. And I remember and I've heard this from three different people that are multi-million dollar earners in, business and the online space and, whatever, and whether it's affiliate marketing or network marketing or, whatever. And they still have imposter syndrome. Like
Mhm.
they still have fear before they step on a stage. They still get the jitters before they go live or they just, make a video or something. And I thought, wow, like if that's human, that's normal. And I feel like that gave me the permission to be like, oh, they just do it anyways. They feel the fear, they just push through it. And they just push through it enough to where that's becomes a habit of pushing through fear. And the fear does get smaller, I think, but it still pops up. And so I thought that was so interesting that, it's something that everyone deals with. And so it's not just like, oh, I'm new and I'm not good at this. It's like, no, that's normal to feel that way. And
Yeah.
so I feel like that really helped me, in that journey as well as to kind of figuring that out. And so tell me a little bit about, I know as a mom of five, how do you manage your time? Like, how do you make this work?
That's a hard one. Another lifelong struggle, I think for sure. Actually, I and this is something I had already been thinking of, but I just interviewed a girl a couple weeks ago, and her biggest tip for me was like that something's got to give. And I was like, I know that. Like I know that in the core of my heart. But again, it's one of those things where the people around you are saying things or making you feel a certain way. Or we see like the highlight reels, online of everyone's perfect life. And it's like, she has more kids than me, right? And she's still like rocking it. And she has time to do her hair and her makeup and her businesses together. And she's going to church and like leading her family and homeschooling. But like the truth is, like something is going to slip. Like you don't see that pile of laundry sitting in her living room for the past like 4 days, right? Or, maybe meals aren't always 100% from scratch, perfectly curated. Like there's always something that has to give and there's season. And I like something that Myron Golden says. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah.
Yeah. He says, that, like, there's balance and then there's focus, and we have to, like, depending on what season we're in. And so, like, in the beginning, when we're trying to grow something new, whether it's, we have a new baby or we have and we're new to parenting, right? A fifth baby, we're like, I kinda know what I'm doing, right? But it's like, there's seasons to everything. And so, like, if we're trying to grow a new business or a ministry or something, like, of course, we're gonna have to put a little more time in. Just like when you're starting a garden, like, you're gonna have to, like, learn a little bit more. You're gonna have to, like, water and, like, weed and stuff like that. So, like, we have to give more attention to something like that because it's in that season where it needs it. And it's not like we don't neglect the other things, but it's just like we have to focus more there and then more balance will come later as things mature and as we learn how to delegate better and as we learn, what God wants us to focus on and when, because not everything is meant for us in a certain season. And sometimes it looks good and, maybe someone will present us with an opportunity or maybe we'll get inspired to do something or we'll read something, but, we have to pray about it and ask God, like, is this really the time I should be jumping into this? Because, our focus gets watered down and it's like making a sandwich and spreading everything too thin. It's not going to taste good because it's going to be too spread out and divided.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, I have such mixed feelings about that too, because sometimes I'm like looking at it and I'm like, all right, like there's been times where God has asked me to step into something and I'm like, I don't know that I have the time or space or energy for another thing. And I know it's like where he's leading me. And so part of me is like, okay, if he's leading you into things and it feels like too much, like ask him. Like go to him, ask him, okay, that's great. How am I going to make that work? How do you want me to schedule my day? What do you want me? Is there something I'm supposed to say no to? Is there something I'm supposed to let go of to make space for this? And also, what does it look like? Because I feel like it's so easy to be like a ping pong ball all day long, just putting out fires and doing like a little bit of this and a little bit of that and focusing on this. And I swear I cannot have a successful day. I don't know if you've read the book Win the Day. But it's such a good book and it has so many good tips and tricks in there. But like one of the things that I have like latched onto is every single day when I'm in my quiet time with the Lord, like I have to ask him what I'm doing that day. Like I have to ask him, what am I focused on? And write it down and then also go back to it throughout the day multiple times.
Hmm.
Because if I don't, it's so easy to, there's, especially if you're doing something online, there's so many distractions and so many different things. And I feel like the enemy is always trying to get us distracted on this or that or whatever. Like, oh, what are they doing? Or what is
Yeah.
this over here? Or the shiny object syndrome. A lot of people struggle with that too, of just knowing this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm focused on, and this is how I'm supposed to do it. And that gives so much more peace too, of knowing, okay, if I'm following his will, I'm following what he wants me to do, then he's going to make it all work out, and we can have the obedience of doing the things, but then also have the peace of knowing I'll do the work, but I'm going to trust you with the results. And that's not on me. I feel like that for sure. Okay, so tell me a little bit about what did it actually look like when you started to build this out, and how do you help moms to renew their mindset and rebuild their confidence? And what's the biggest lie that you see moms believing that keeps them stuck in survival mode?
Yeah. So when I started out, I was actually over on Facebook, and I still do have a group over there. But I kind of was just like, hey, are any moms, struggling with this, that, and the other thing? Like, and it started out with just mindset, but then I was like, well, sometimes you need to figure out how to make money so you can actually stay home with your babies, right? Because maybe your calling is, a business, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a ministry. And some ministries, maybe you make money for, some ministries, maybe you don't. It just totally depends on where you're at. But I was like, the reality is at the end of the day, we all kind of need money, and everyone's so scared to talk about money, especially in the Christian space. It's like, I don't know, people think money is evil or something, and they misunderstand that Bible verse all the time. It's like the love of money is the real evil, but they take that one word out and it's like a totally different thing. And then it's like, oh my gosh, you're a Christian and you're worried about money. But if you think about it, like the people that aren't worried about money are giving away the best hours and years of their life to a thankless boss who's building their own dream, right? While we're giving away all this precious time with our babies, time we could spend pouring into the kingdom of God. So, like, that's what it was for me. And I was seeing moms saying those kinds of things. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to like build this group as I go because I need to figure out what they're actually struggling with because I know what I'm struggling with, but like, what are they struggling with? So it kind of was like a joint effort in a community more than like a, hey, look, this is my business, right? And I recently moved it over to the school platform just because I felt like it was more homogenous, everything worked together better. And that's still what I'm doing. Like I'm literally messaging moms one on one or asking them in real life, even because I've had so many conversations that I didn't even start. And moms just start talking. And I'm like, God, like put them here to like tell me that. And I didn't even like prompt them. And they're just coming up to me and telling me like what they're struggling with and like they don't know what to do. And I'm just like trying to give them whatever tips I can and like the little elevator pitch moment that I have with them. I'm like, try this, do that. And so just seeing what moms needed was kind of the thing for that. And as far as like the lies that they believe, it's that they can't do both, like that they have to pick one or the other. And, I have a lot of friends who are like working and they want to be home with their babies so badly, but either their husbands are like, nope, you have to do this. You got to put the kids in school, you got to work, but they don't realize that they're trading like time for money. And they're putting their kids in school or whatever it be, daycare, maybe having their parents watch them, which would be at least family, right? But it's like they're giving away these hours of their life, and maybe some of them are paying to drive there. They don't have the energy when they get home to cook meals, so they're ordering out, right? And it's like it's all these little things that work together. So like I think moms are falling into this trap that like we have to follow the American dream model, like the model that everyone's saying, but not realizing there is another way. And it's not easy. It's not like I'm not saying it's easy for moms to do that. And I'm not saying it's possible for everyone in the current season they're in, but it's just like a mindset shift that we need to make. And again, seeking the Lord in it and figuring out like what he really wants for us. Like, do we need or three or multiple family cars, all or like, cars all with like gigantic loans on them? Do we need Netflix and Hulu and like all these subscriptions? Do we need to eat out three, four times a week? Do we need to go to Disney twice a year? Like all these little things, like they're lovely and they're nice and they're wonderful. And ideally, like, yes, we do want them all for our family if that's what we desire. And I think that can come with time, but sometimes we have to kind of step back and say, like, what's important in this season? How can I be with my family if that really is on your heart? What can I cut out to make it work? And then not only that, but how can I get back on the path to creating this financial freedom so I can have time freedom? Because ultimately, like, people don't want money. They don't want a piece of paper. Money's just paper. They want what money buys, which is that time freedom. And so like my whole thing is to help them find the confidence and the belief in themselves that they can do that and to get above those lies in their mind, to get above those limiting beliefs that they've had since their childhood that they probably inherited from their parents or again, another well meaning person in their life, but they didn't even realize those were lies that were keeping them stuck, whether they were money lies or lies about their identity, who they were, what they could actually accomplish in life. And once they get past that, they can start to see possibilities and dream again. And then once they dream again, they're like, okay, well, I have all these dreams, but how can I follow them? And then we kind of talk about that too. And I'm building out something right now that like goes way more into detail there, like to actually build like a pathway towards following your calling. But the foundation, which is where most of my moms in my community are right now, is like getting out of those the lie identities and the just, like, the stuck feeling.
Definitely. And it's fear too, a fear of stepping into the
Mm,
unknown. And I love that you say, like, yeah, you can pull back and like change the way you're doing things because that's our life. I mean, we travel full time, but we aren't millionaires. We just spend differently than other people. We don't
mhm,
spend money on stuff. We don't spend money on sports and stuff for the house because we spend money on travel and experiences. And instead of paying for a mortgage, we pay for Airbnbs and hotels and things like that instead. And so it's really just shifting away, I think, from the mainstream of this is what it's supposed to look like and this is how it has
yeah,
to be. And then the other thing, I also think it's not always about pulling back, how you're spending too. It could also be like, how are you spending your time? Like, could you, instead of, because I know, like, I remember, like, even when you're working full time and you're a busy mom, you still have time to scroll on your phone for 2 hours
mhm,
a day.
yep,
What if you could turn those 2 hours a day into creating an income? And what if you
mhm,
build that income up to replace the income that you have? And so then you could quit without letting go of those things because there's so many different ways to do that these days and there's so many people that are willing to come alongside you to help you with that. And the other thing too is like one of the things that I did when I first got started was I shifted how I spent my time. I stopped watching Netflix or listening to books that were just for pleasure. And I shifted
mhm,
everything to mindset, learning, professional development, personal development, and really being able to change my life. I spent the time to learn the things so that I could change where we were because at one point we were stuck in debt, we were in a house, we were wanting to travel, we were struggling in our marriage, so same thing. And I feel like everyone goes through those times and it really comes down to being to the point where you're like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, to where I'm finally going to move because the fear of staying stuck is actually growing bigger than the fear of actually doing something about it. Putting myself out there and failing through it, which really just means learning through it. It doesn't actually mean failing. So I love that share that, there's so many things that when you're in this mainstream thinking that you're believing that are not even true. Like that's a lie. Like you don't have to live that way. You don't have to do it that way. Like there's so many other ways to do it. And especially now, like I feel like now sky's the limit as to the different options out there. So what would
absolutely.
you say to mom listening that maybe feel disqualified or like she's too far behind to start, or maybe she's too old, or maybe she feels like, but I don't have the time to do that, or just I don't know. Like I feel like sometimes the enemy puts that lie in us that it's too late for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one of his biggest devices, like you were saying earlier, is like distraction and discouragement. Because like that's how he gets to us. He's not going to be like super up in our face. Like he's going to be very subtle about it. I mean, the Bible describes how he works. And so then we get all surprised, like when we find out like those voices in our head were him or those distractions, those dings on our phone that keep pulling us away from what we were trying to focus on, right? And so yeah, I would say that number one, like especially if you're doing this for your kids, sometimes you have to use your kids as a motivator. I know when I was 17, just as like a random example, and I got pregnant, I was 17. Kids are selfish when they're 17, right? And it could have went so many different ways. I'm so thankful that my parents were pro-life. Um, and they weren't like flamboyantly pro-life, but they were like pro-life enough to be like, hey, that's a baby, right? Not something else. And but I remember at the time I was smoking cigarettes and like I look back and I'm like, oh, how could I do that? Right. Becoming pregnant actually made me quit because I was like, this is a life. I can't do this to another life. So sometimes we have to use our children as a motivator, right? And For me, it's like the biggest thing for me, like making the change to actually get up early and start pursuing this calling and moving towards financial freedom and all these things was like, my kids are looking at me. Your kids are looking at you. And, what do we tell our kids all the time? You can be anything you want, right? But they're looking at us and they're like, but mom, why aren't you? Like, why aren't you pursuing your goals? And there's been times where over the years, like I said, I've been trying to do this for like 12 years, but not this, but different things. Like, I mean, multiple MLMs, selling jewelry, just so many things. I can't even describe to you how many things, like all the things, selling baked goods from home. And when I give up on those things and I'm like, oh, this just isn't going to work. My kids are always like, but mom, they're like, this is your dream. Like, why are you can't give up on that. Right. And they like kind of bring me back to it. And then I'm remembering they're looking at me and my daughter, she's 13. She always reminds me, she's like, mom, you're my biggest inspiration. Like, I feel like I could do anything because you are constantly like pushing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's just like, I don't want to get emotional, but it really is like you look at your children and just imagine like the things that you're telling yourself or the enemy's telling you and putting in your mind. Imagine saying that out loud to them. You would never say that to someone you love. So why are you saying that to yourself, right? And God doesn't want us to be hard on ourselves like that. And He doesn't want us to feel stuck like that. He wants us to um pursue what He's put on our heart. It says that if you love the Lord, that He'll give you the desires of your heart. And I think a lot of people, and I heard this twist on it, and I'm not a theologian, so I don't know, but people think it means like He's going to be like, oh, you love me. Okay, here's the desire. But someone said, what if it means that he put those desires on our heart? And so I was like, that's so cool because like with this whole ministry that I have, which is like my ultimate goal here, and I don't know that that's going to be part of the whole mom revolution thing or if it'll be like its own subset, but it's basically like we have this 40-foot school bus in our backyard and we're converting it into an RV and we want to travel the US. And the plan was to like live on the bus, like full time. I think I want to do it for a year now. Like it's kind of morphed as we went along. And the Lord actually gave me like this blueprint for this land. And so I want to find this land and build our dream home and then start a tiny home pregnancy resource community, a pro life community. And my husband's a carpenter, and I'm like, okay, you don't know this yet, but you're building all these tiny houses for these women and just like find these women who want to choose life for their babies, whether they want to keep them and raise them or adopt them out, and take them in and let them live in one of these tiny homes and either train them how to mom, like how to mom, do all the things that involve momming, or to help them adopt their babies out, or help them to get a job, or help them to find out what their calling is to produce income, whatever that looks like for them. And like that's my ultimate goal, and that's like a huge scary goal. And like I'm like God like actually gave me this blueprint for some of these buildings and stuff, and I don't know where it came from. It had to have come from God. Like I'm not that creative, but like that I've had that for like 6 or 7 years, and I keep asking God. I'm like, can you please take this for me if it's not meant for me? Like there's a bus sitting in my backyard. It's like 80% converted. Somebody broke into it like 4 years ago and stole all my father-in-law's power tools, and that kind of like put a damper on things that we were doing. But again, I believe that every literal thing, even the awful, horrible stuff that's happened to us is something to do that it's gonna work to ultimately to our good or to the good of what God intends, right? Because like in Genesis, Joseph, I believe it was, said, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, right? So like every little thing that happens to us is like either shaping us into who we're supposed to become, equipping us so that we can help someone with what we've went through so they don't step on the same landmines we did, or so that we can help them navigate those landmines or some other thing. It could be a delay, it could be a divine delay. Maybe it wasn't time to go. Maybe he didn't want us rushing through the bus. And I don't know. I don't know. It's like when you're stuck in a traffic jam and you're like, why is this happening? I don't want to sit here, but you get up ahead and you see there was a horrible accident. Like we don't know why all these little things work as they do, but God knows. And so like just trusting him, even in the delays, even in the obstacles, the failures, like all that stuff, just trusting him brings so much comfort. And I think ultimately that's what we have to do to just to get by and to
Yeah.
succeed.
Oh gosh, that's so many good things. So, first off, I love your vision. And it's kind of crazy because I had a similar vision, not with like pro life necessarily, but more just like discipling. And I just told my husband this like probably 3 weeks ago. And it's not a vision that came from me because most of my like desires are travel or missions or going or whatever. And this was like more like homestead, tiny homes, like having space for people to come and, be discipled and rebuild their lives. And I did picture single moms. I pictured families that were having a hard time that really just needed to be put in a spot where they could thrive and then start to rebuild, build up that mindset and do all of that. So it's crazy that you said that because it almost feels like confirmation. Because at first I was like, what is that about? Sometimes when you get
Yeah.
little visions from the Lord, you're like, what are you talking about? I wasn't even thinking about something like that. And so it's funny that I don't know, it's
Yeah.
crazy, but everything happens for a reason. I think that's so true. When things happen,
Absolutely.
even if it's not like made it happen, he will still use it for good. And so there's definitely things that I feel like in our
Hmm.
journey have been, harder than we expected. I mean, even traveling can be, I have so many stories. There's been so many things that have been just hard on us, things we've seen, things our kids have seen, experiences and different things. But I know that he's using all of that to shape us and to prepare us. And that's what he does, and that is one of the most beautiful journeys of even entrepreneurship too, is becoming. I am a completely
Yes.
different person than I was when I first started. I would not have even recognized myself back then. And I think that's probably my
Yeah.
favorite part. I just feel like it really is shaping you and shaving off the rough pieces. And it's not easy to go through personal growth and to continue
Yeah.
to work on that mindset and all of those things, but it's so worth it. Even
Oh
if
yeah.
it never made the money that we needed to make, or, it hadn't gotten to where we are now, it still would have been worth it. I think that is one thing that people don't talk about enough is the becoming. So as we're talking about that, I would love to hear a little bit of what is your community? How can people find you? And I'll make sure to put all the links here in the show notes, but how can people find you and what can they expect in joining that?
Yeah. To what you just said, I just wanted to add a really quick comment because I thought that was beautiful. And it was actually something I was hoping you would have brought up was the becoming. I believe it's Jim Rohn that says, it's not what you get, it's who you become. And I think that's so important that you brought that up and that you touched on that. And one of actually God's very first command in the Bible in Genesis was to become. This is another thing from Myron Golden that he said. It's one of I love this framework. It's the be, do, have framework. I think he's the only one. He might not even be the one that coined it, but once I heard this, I just thought it was so cool because everyone wants to have things, right? But they're not willing to do the things that get them what they want to have. But they can't just do the things and they're like, why is this not working? They have to become the person first. So, like, in one Genesis 1:28, his first command was be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. That's be fruitful, multiply is do, and then have dominion. And so yeah, you're right with the becoming. It's all about like we can't have what we want unless we are becoming the thing that, or we can't have what God desires for us rather, which is more important, unless we become the person that is willing to be sculpted and molded and all, like you said. So I just thought that was really cool. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so I'm on the school platform. That's the best place to find me. It's the SKOOL. It's a lot of people don't know about it yet. I actually just recently found out about it. There's so many cool communities on there. A lot of them are free. Some of them have monthly memberships. There's all kinds of different tiers, and it totally depends on what you're into. I mean, you could find a school group on like cutting your pet's nails. It's absolutely wild. So mine is Whole Mom Revolution. You just search it. I mean, I'll give you the link. I also have a podcast like you do, and I'm on YouTube. Those are like the most common places I can be found. I am on all social media, but like you said before, focusing on what you really want to do, like what platform you really want to make work because they all have different nuances and stuff. And you have to go where your people are. And I think a lot of moms, right? They're on Facebook too. But I think a lot of moms are listening to podcasts, right? Like while they're washing dishes, while they're driving their kids, or while they're driving down the road traveling or whatnot. It's like podcasts are so cool because you can like speed them up. I listened on 2 times speed, and my husband is like,
Same.
"You are nuts." He's like, "How much caffeine did you drink today?" It sounds like you're listening to chipmunks argue. Like, what is happening right now? And I'm like, "Oh, it's 2 times speed." And then they recently released like 2.5 times speed, and I was like, "Yes." I was like, it's like another language. You have to learn it, but you can't really understand it as the average person. But yeah, so that's it. That's where I'm at. Whole mom revolution everywhere.
I love that. I listen to everything on like 2 times speed and I saw the 2.5 and I was like, yes, because you can go through so much faster. I actually wish there was an app. Someone needs to,
Yes,
here's an idea. I want an app that will listen to things for me or watch videos for me and then give me the cliff notes. Like I would love that because there's so many.
there is a thing. There
Is
is a
there?
thing.
What is it called? Do you know?
There is a thing. No, it's a hack. So, you know ChatGPT, right? Like, some people are weird about it, but
Yeah.
so you basically go on YouTube or whatever, and you get the transcript, which you can get the transcript of anybody's video for anything. Like, if you put this on YouTube, there'll be a transcript, and you copy the whole transcript, you paste it into ChatGPT, and you say, "Give me cliff notes," or "Give me a synopsis," or "Break down the top 20 points from this," and it will. I will say though, and this is just my like little thing that I've noticed because I have done that in a jiffy, and it was so good. I went back and listened to the whole thing, and I found something that it didn't give me, and I was like, "Ooh, ChatGPT." So we all get like little different little golden nuggets out of everything we consume. And I think and I feel like that's one of the way God speaks to us, right? Obviously he speaks to us through his word. Obviously he speaks to us through prayer and, quiet times. But I think he also speaks to us through sermons, and he also speaks to us through conversations with friends and books we read. And again, bad experiences, good experiences. He speaks to us through everything, through nature, like through whatever vessel we are willing to absorb a lesson from, right? And so sometimes we can read, you know how you can read the same Bible verse like 100 million times, but you get something different from it, like on the 99th time or whatever? It's kind of like that. So don't always skip things. Don't
Totally.
always ask for cliff notes because sometimes there's just like this tiny little nugget in there and it's like, oh my gosh, that's it. And it like unlocks something and it could change your whole life. So you
I
just never
agree.
know.
It's so true, so true. But I just
Yeah.
sometimes I really just want it first
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
I wanna know, like, is it worth watching? Like, is it worth my
Yes.
'cause
Absolutely.
gosh, there's so many things out there that,
Yeah.
I always want to. So, couple
Yes.
things before we end. What was a book that changed your life?
This is a weird one for Christians because there's like mixed reviews on this, but I will say it is like 99% good. It's called Into the Magic Shop by I believe it's James Doty. Are you familiar with it?
No, I don't think so. Into the
It's
man.
not about magic. I will say it's
Okay.
not about magic. So in a nutshell, he was this little boy. His dad was an alcoholic. I can't remember what was going on with his mom, but he didn't have a good life growing up. And he was always into magic, like little kid magic, like card tricks, the thumb where you put the scarf in there and it disappears. And so he was just riding his bike one day. I think something happened at home or whatever, and he would just escape and he would ride his bike as fast as he could. And he came to this like little magic shop in a little strip mall area. This was back in like the 60s or 70s, I don't know. And he went in, and the guy that normally worked there wasn't there, and his mom was there instead. She knew nothing about like she's like a thumb that you can put a scarf in. What's that, right? She knew nothing about that. But she had warm chocolate chip cookies and she saw that I don't know, she saw something in him. You know how you meet some people and you can just see something in them. And so she started talking to him and she basically in a nutshell, she helped him with his mindset. She helped him believe that anything was possible. She helped him learn how to like clear his mind and how to just like focus on what he wanted, focus on the good in life and not the horrible, terrible things that had happened to him, the horrible things that were still happening or may happen in the future. And she just helped him realize like the magic that we really can create in our lives if we because that's what it's about, right? Like I think Tony Robbins is the one that said it. You don't like life isn't what's happening to you, it's like your how you perceive what's happening to you. And
Oh,
it's the story that we give it. And even our past, like our past is subject to change. There's a book called Become Your Future Self Now. I think it's Benjamin Hardy that wrote it. And he talks about how we think the past is like on this timeline, but it's really not. Like we can change the past, so to speak, by changing the meaning that we give to it. We don't have to let it define the rest of our lives just because something bad happened. So, into the magic shop, that's what he talks about. And he actually became a neurosurgeon because he had a friend whose dad was a neurosurgeon and he had a really cool watch and a nice car. And like at the time when he was a kid, that's what he wanted. He wanted like the cool stuff. But as he grew up, he understood that like, money in the hands of good people can change the world. And I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but he doesn't say anything like wonky or weird in there that I've noticed. And it's really good because like he teaches you like these really basic ways that you can just stop focusing, like just every day at the beginning of your day, like take quiet time with God, right? And you can apply principles from pretty much anything you learn to anything in your life. And so that's what I did. That was one of my biggest lessons was like, don't let your past define you and don't like let the meaning that you're giving something just because it's not good now doesn't mean that God can't use it for ultimately for the good.
that's so good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Okay, so one more question before we wrap up. What is a scripture that you're standing on in this season?
Well, I already shared one of my favorite with you, which was the one from Joseph in Genesis 50:20, where you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. But another one of my favorites is, and it's very similar to that. It's Romans 8:28. We know in all things God works for good for those who love Him and have been called according to His purpose. Because again, I've had some things happen that like I either that I've done myself that I wasn't proud of, or things that happened to me and I was like, this is awful. Why would a loving God let this happen? Right. Or things that I see happening in the world. And I don't watch the news, for the record. I try to stay as far away from that stuff as possible, but you can't help it. You go on social media, you go out to a co-op with your kids and it's like people are talking about things, right? And I always think like, and we all think that, right? And maybe that's the devil whispering too, because like we don't know why things are happening. But it's like, why would a loving God let this happen? And the Bible tells us, it says all things work for good. So we don't know in hindsight. Sometimes we can see like, oh yeah, okay, that's why. But we just have to trust that God will work things out ultimately for those who are called according to his purpose and those who love God. And we love God and we're doing the best that we can with what knowledge we currently have in this season. We can't be hard on ourselves for what we didn't know before. And we just have to kind of trust that God is telling the truth. I mean, otherwise we call him a liar, and he's not a liar. He's not a man that he can lie.
So good. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for coming on here and just such a powerful conversation. So, everyone, go and find Kelly. I will put all of the links down here below so you can check her out, check out her book and her YouTube and her podcast and her community as well. So, thank you so much for joining me. And till next time,
Thank you, Janine. Have a good day.
see you too.